Hi everyone, and welcome to my podcast for Illinois State University's Stevenson Center for Community and Economic Development. My name is Melissa Johnston-Gross, and I'm currently in my second year at the Stevenson Center, and I'm completing a Master's in Applied Economics with a focus in Community and Economic Development. And just to give you an idea of what Applied Economics is, for those who might not know, it's the study of economics as it relates to practical uses and applications. And in this discipline, we learn how to use economics to conduct research and hopefully solve real-world problems. But I want to come back to that later and instead start by introducing myself and giving you some insight into my path to the Stevenson Center. I am originally from Australia, although I spent my early years living in the US. I have a double degree in Bachelor of Commerce and a Bachelor of International Relations with majors in Economics and Indonesian from Deakin University in Melbourne on the southeast coast of Australia. Now, during my undergraduate degree, I was fortunate enough to study abroad twice. The first time was in West Sumatra in Indonesia, and the second time in Prague in the Czech Republic. These experiences showed me how other people live, what they value, the cultures that they exist in, and religions that they follow. And I think looking back, these experiences, most notably Indonesia, spurred my desire to live a life in service to others. I moved back to the US after graduation and began a series of what I'll call low opportunity jobs. I've always had a mind for social justice, and I knew that I wanted to work serving others, but it wasn't until I discovered AmeriCorps that I thought that it was possible. I was hired as an AmeriCorps VISTA, which stands for Volunteer in Service to America, at an education and youth development nonprofit in Waukegan, Illinois, as the lone grant writer and the lone fundraiser. Now, this nonprofit served low-income youth, many of who had dropped out of high school. They might have been food insecure or previously incarcerated, some were homeless, but you get the idea. We worked to educate the students to earn a GED education and obtain several construction certifications so that they could graduate into the workforce and be more productive citizens. And my particular role was to raise money for the nonprofit through local, state, and federal grants. I helped plan the annual golf outing, which was our major fundraiser. I helped send solicitations through email, also mail, and created some email newsletters to provide program updates. The best thing about working as a VISTA wasn't the money that we raised, though. It was great, and it was an amazing feeling to get that feedback and to know that we'd won the award and to know that that money was going to change our programs in tangible ways to affect more students. But the best thing about VISTA was the insight it gave me into the challenges faced by youth in our communities in America. Learning about their life experiences and the systemic barriers that they faced then, and probably still do now, was an absolute privilege. But the best thing about VISTA was also probably the worst thing, in the sense that I knew these barriers weren't faced to the same degree by our white youth, and that a series of political, social, and cultural factors led to our students' predicaments. And I knew that I couldn't do nothing with this knowledge, so I sought to build the skills necessary to analyze these barriers, to learn about these barriers inside and out, and to chip away at them. I then decided to go to grad school. While preparing for grad school, this is a fun fact, I spent more than 3 months studying for the GRE because I was so worried that they wouldn't let me in. But while preparing, I found myself at an international development organisation called CARE back in Australia. And it was here that I learned about community development on a global level and did some work in database management and data quality. And after one short year, I was back in Illinois. I applied to the Stevenson Center because the program is a unique, designed program that fosters a commitment to service and to social change. And the program has a fantastic combination of coursework and theory, but also practical experience. This appealed to me because I wanted to learn how to tangibly apply community development theory and knowledge that I would learn in the classroom in a really practical way. And I figured a year of work experience on the resume would help insulate me from postgraduate unemployment, potentially. And I also want to acknowledge the attractiveness of the financial package too, which is a major motivator in me applying to the program. Actually, the first I read about the Stevenson Center program was on the AmeriCorps website, where they list all the institutions that match the AmeriCorps Education Award. And the Stevenson Center offers a full tuition waiver with a stipend, and I really don't want to understate how important that was to me in going back to school. I also knew some ISU alumni from my time in AmeriCorps who highly recommended ISU to me, which was really helpful too. My experience at the Stevenson Center has been amazing and challenging. My first year of classes was hectic. We all had 4 classes a semester. By we, I mean my cohort, all 18 of us. In addition to those classes, my assistantship was off campus at the United Way of McLean County for 20 hours a week, so I was plenty busy. And as a sidebar, that's a really good reason to go to grad school. You become a pro at time management and workflow management. But anyway, the economics major is incredibly rigorous and challenging at the best of times, but I learned so much. I even surprised myself in the end at how much I liked the quantitative stuff. But I completed my capstone this past summer, and it was an evaluation of education policy in Illinois relating to 21st century community learning centers. Now, this was introduced in Illinois as part of the No Child Left Behind reauthorization in 2003, where states were given money to fund these learning centers that focused efforts towards achieving better outcomes for those low-income, low-achieving schools across the state. I took the raw data from the Illinois State Board of Education, added some unemployment data, juvenile justice data as additional county-level controls, and put all that through some programs, and my results showed that the schools that had in fact implemented this program increased significantly in test score outcomes. Large gains seen in middle schools specifically, but across the board, there were large gains seen with the demographics of low-income students of colour. And now, these results imply that the initial implementation of the program was successful, and the program could benefit more students into the future if funding was increased, or perhaps even maintained in the current climate. Now, to talk about my professional practice, my first assistantship was off campus at United Way of McLean County, and I was so fortunate and grateful to be able to continue my tenure there into my second year at the Stevenson Center. United Way of McLean County aims to unite our community to help solve complex social issues through fundraising and grant making, but also coalition building. United Way indirectly helps over 38,000 people in our community by distributing grants to local nonprofits. And we've also embarked recently on a collective impact initiative which seeks to bring diverse stakeholders together for the shared goal of increasing educational outcomes throughout the county. At the core of collective impact is true collaboration. Collaboration such that everyone is involved and has a stake in the shared goal and aims to tangibly achieve it. The initiative is very data focused and uses local data to guide our goals and to measure our success. And this is where my role at United Way comes in. I collect and analyze the county level data points for inclusion in our collective impact initiative. I draw from sources like the Census, Department of Labor, Illinois State Board of Education, Illinois Department of Justice, all of those type public data sets. And most of this data comes in raw form, so I'll generally extract the useful data points, summarize them, put them into graphs or short talking points. And a lot of that data, particularly the education data that we've collected, has highlighted racial disparities in almost, if not all, educational outcomes in the county. And this trend is echoed in the poverty statistics too, and I suspect reflects national trends more generally across the country. I also do a lot of research to help inform our work at United Way. I've collected data for inclusion in a county-wide collaborative community health needs assessment, which we did in collaboration with the health department, some local hospitals, and ourselves. In addition, I do a lot of additional research, like policy and program briefs for committee groups. I tailor those to each audience so they can learn about the pertinent policy that relates to our work. I've done topics like new market tax credits, the Department of Agriculture's local food production program, HUD's Continuum of Care program, among others. And another large part of my job is processing grant applications and collecting report statistics that measure our program's successes. And we're currently migrating to a flashy new grant application portal, so I've been testing that a lot lately and ensuring that it meets our standards. Another project I've worked on is mapping community resources. And the picture that emerges is often a story of community need. For example, I started mapping local grocery stores, childcare centres, gyms, healthcare clinics, etc. But what the map showed was that a particular section of town was almost exclusively left out of reach of these resources. And since then, I've done additional maps that put census data by census tract onto a map to show things like poverty rates and educational attainment. And again, all these maps echo the fact that this physical space in our community is lacking many of these resources. And these maps have led our work and the work of our partners to advocate for food access and economic development in this physical area. And mapping, by the way, is something that I learned at the Stevenson Center. We took a summer class and learned all about ArcGIS. It was very cool. But now, typically my general day involves some type of data analysis, but other than that, it changes all the time. No 2 days are alike. One of the greatest things I've learned, though, at my tenure at United Way, is that lasting change takes a really long time, and it doesn't happen by being idle. It requires the work of so many dedicated people who are engaged and who are relentless and know that things can be and should be better. And I've met a lot of passionate community development workers that have taught me so much without even trying. And for all of those reasons, I'm so grateful for my time at United Way of McLean County. But looking forward, I would like to apply my skills to public policy evaluation as maybe a data analyst or a policy analyst. I think being a public servant would be really nice, or even working for an organisation with a social impact mission. I'm not really fussed. But if you are listening to me and you are thinking about grad school, I strongly encourage you to apply at Illinois State University's Stevenson Center for Community and Economic Development. You'll get rigorous academic training, great work experience, a financial package that will be amazing, lifelong friends, and priceless memories. That sounds hyperbolic, but I promise you it isn't. And I'd like to finish by thanking the staff of Stevenson Center for the support that they've shown me. Thanks to you all for admitting me to your program and for the endless opportunities that you've given me. You're all amazing. And one more thank you. A big shout out to my cohort, all 18 of you. You all supported me through this program. You're amazing, and I have every confidence in your future successes. Thanks for listening. Bye.